Hello and welcome to another YouTube video. In today's video, I will be going over how I got the rust effect on my T4 rat rod. Well, I say rust effect, I mean it's the actual rust, because it's not rust. It's not that rusty paint stuff. It's actual rust, with a few little tricks to make it look a bit better. Today I'll be going over how I managed to get the shapes and how I got the rust effect on my van. So here we go. The very first thing I tried was to use a sanding flap wheel in the end of a drill, and I thought I would test out on my fuel cap just to see how it would turn out. While I started doing it, I started realizing that the flap wheel was just taking too long, and it just wasn't having the effect that I wanted it to have. So then I decided, right, it's time to bring out the angle grinder. For some reason, I don't have any pictures of me using the angle grinder, but as you can see from these photos, you can see what I've done. Basically, I use the angle grinder to kind of take all the paint off down to the bare metal. I even had to go through the zinc coating that was on top of the metal. I then shaped the edges of the paint into like what I in my mind was natural kind of rushed shapes that you see on a lot of things that have been left. So that's what I did to start with. All I did after that was I got myself some white vinegar. I brushed on the white vinegar to all the bare metal parts of the van. Then I had some sea salt in the cupboard for some reason. So I also got a handful of sea salt and rubbed it into all the bare metal bits on top, so it was kind of soaked into the white vinegar. And I left that for 24 hours, and when I came out, this is how orange it was. To be honest, when I put the white vinegar on, I almost started to see the metal turning slightly orange before my eyes. It happened so quick. In this picture here, you can see this is what the rust looked like. I think that was after about 3 or 4 days, maybe. Basically, because there were still angle grinder marks in the metal, you could kind of see them. I wanted to leave it to rust enough so the rust kind of started to take over and the shape of the angle grinder marks disappeared. My idea all along for the rust was to have the rust patches on the van, but I really wanted to have that the effect of the rust running down the paint, like what you see in a lot of things that have been abandoned or whatever. You get the rust patches, but then you have the rust running down underneath it, don't you? So basically, that's the effect I wanted to go for on this van. What I did here was I waited to the rust to go kind of, how can I word this? Kind of fluffy, if that makes sense. So what I did then was I gave the rust patches a quick sand, so the rust was kind of like loose powder over the rusted area. Then I sprayed water on, which ran down the van, taking the rust particles that I'd sanded off with it. As you can see in this picture here, the goal was to try and stain the side of the van. I did this about 7 times, I think, over about 2-week period, just to try and get the natural rust running down the van look. But when I washed the van, if I'm honest, it just wasn't the effect I was looking for. So I thought I'd try something else. So basically, what I've done here was I have a very talented best friend actually, who's an amazing airbrush artist. I gave him a call and asked him to come over to see if he could make well, as close as we can to natural looking rust run lines, if that's what you want to call them, down the van coming off of the rust. This was basically just to give it a head start. So when it did actually start to naturally make its own runs down the van, it would, how can I put it? It would improve it, if that makes sense. So what I've actually got left with now on the van, on this current day, is it's kind of a mixture of the airbrush marks and natural rust lines running down the van. They've kind of mixed together to make, well, what I think is a really good effect. It looks quite natural, and half of it, to be fair, 50% of it is natural now. But yeah, this is how the airbrushing went, and this is what it looked like. As you can see in this picture here, over time, the natural rust lines started to kind of the sharp edge lines that the airbrush did started to haze out a bit as it naturally rusted down the van. Here is another earlier shot of the van with the rust on the side. You can still kind of see the runs aren't that great. The airbrush runs aren't that big, if that makes sense. And what I've done here was, as you can see, the van is quite a bright turquoise there compared to what it is today. Because what I decided to do was use boiled linseed oil to coat the whole van. Every year I'd give it a new coat. The reason the van is so dark green today is because the linseed oil over time kind of slightly yellows, and this is what it looks like now. But as you can see, it's a lot darker in these pictures. I'm not sure, but it makes the rust go a lot darker, as you can see in the pictures. It's not so orange anymore, but it also darkens the whole van down. What I've decided to do, which I'll be making a video of soon, is actually, I think I'm going to be using some paint thinners to take quite a bit of the linseed oil off to try and get that bright colour back. And then I'm going to be using yacht varnish to varnish the entire van. That should make the rust darker and make all the runs pop more, but it should also protect the whole van and give it a nice shine. So that will be in the next video, so keep a watch out for that. Anyway, that's the end of today's video. Thanks for watching.